In April 1943, a German Luftwaffe pilot named Ralph Herken stared through his canopy and started to laugh. Below him, a group of American fighters was struggling to climb. They were fat. They were bulky. They looked like someone had bolted wings onto a massive boiler and expected it to fly. Herken keyed his radio to his wingman. "The Americans are sending us flying milk bottles. This is going to be easy." At that moment, the Luftwaffe was the most elite fighting force in the world. They flew elegant, agile machines built for the dance of a dogfight. They saw the new American P-47 Thunderbolt as a joke, a mechanical mistake born from a nation that didn't understand the art of war. They were dead wrong. What the Germans didn't realize was that they weren't looking at a fighter plane. They were looking at 7 tons of American industrial spite. Within 18 months, those same German pilots would wake up screaming from nightmares about the flying barrel that refused to die. This is the story of the P-47 Thunderbolt, the outlier that proved that in a fight between a dancer and a tank, the tank eventually wins. In 1940, Alexander Kartveli, a Georgian immigrant working for Republic Aviation, proposed a design that made test pilots laugh. He wanted to build a single-engine fighter that weighed as much as a structural beam. Empty, the P-47 weighed 7 tons. Its engine alone, the Pratt & Whitney R2800, weighed more than an entire Japanese Zero. Kartveli admitted his creation was a dinosaur, but he promised it would be a dinosaur that survived. While the British built the Spitfire for beauty, and the Germans built the Bf-109 for precision, America built the P-47 for violence. It was equipped with 8.50 caliber machine guns. When all 8 fired simultaneously, they unleashed 100 heavy bullets every single second. It didn't just shoot planes, it sawed them in half. But the first few months were a disaster. American boys from small towns in Texas and Oklahoma were being picked off by German veterans who had been flying since the Spanish Civil War. The British suggested the Americans reconsider their choice of aircraft. German ace Joseph Priller filed a report calling the Thunderbolt an easy target, comparing its maneuverability to a freight train. Then came June 26, 1943, the day the milk bottle became a legend. Lieutenant Robert Johnson, a 23-year-old kid from Oklahoma, was jumped by a pack of Focke-Wulf 19s over France. In seconds, his P-47 was a wreck. 20mm cannon shells exploded inside his cockpit. The canopy shattered. His engine caught fire. Hydraulic fluid sprayed his face. Johnson tried to bail out, but he discovered a terrifying system error. A cannon shell had welded his canopy shut. He was trapped inside a burning furnace, 5 miles up, with no way out. Seeing the American was crippled, a German pilot pulled in behind to finish the job. He fired his cannons. He fired his machine guns. He emptied every single round he had into the tail of Johnson's plane. Johnson huddled behind his seat's armor plate and prayed. When the German ran out of ammunition, he was so stunned the plane was still airborne that he pulled up alongside the cockpit. He looked at the American milk bottle, now a flying piece of Swiss cheese, shook his head in pure disbelief, snapped a salute to the man who refused to die, and flew away. Johnson landed that plane. The ground crew stopped counting bullet holes after 200. Word spread through the Luftwaffe. You cannot kill this thing. American pilots learned a hard lesson. Don't try to dance with a German. If you try to outturn them, you die. But if you use the P-47's greatest weakness, its weight as a weapon, you become a god. The P-47 possessed a massive turbo supercharger that allowed it to breathe at 30,000 feet, where German engines were gasping for air. At that altitude, the Americans owned the atmospheric high ground. The tactic was simple: the boom and zoom. Climb to the stratosphere, spot the agile German below, roll over, and dive. Because it weighed 14,000 pounds, gravity turned the P-47 into a 7-ton meteor. It could reach 550 miles per hour in a dive, faster than any propeller plane was ever meant to go. The Germans couldn't run, and they couldn't hide. By the time they heard the thunderclap of the massive 13-foot propeller blades breaking the sound barrier at the tips, the wall of lead was already there. Colonel Gabby Gabreski, the top American ace in Europe, described the P-47's firepower not as shooting, but as erasing. German fighters carried powerful cannons, but they only had about 10 seconds of firing time. The Thunderbolt carried 3,400 rounds. It could pour out lead for 30 continuous seconds. Gabreski witnessed German fighters literally disintegrating in mid-air, tails separating from noses, wings snapping like toothpicks. On October 8, 1943, one of Germany's greatest super aces, Hans Philipp, 200 victories, found himself gasping for air at 28,000 feet. Above him was Robert Johnson, the same kid who had been murdered months earlier. Johnson dived from 30,000 feet. 3 seconds of fire later, Germany's greatest hero was gone. Just gone. But the true outlier value of the P-47 wasn't just its armor or its guns. It was the mathematics of American production. Republic Aviation built 15,683 Thunderbolts. At the height of the war, they were rolling one plane off the assembly line every hour, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. A captured German pilot once taunted an American commander while looking at a field of burning Thunderbolts. The American commander didn't get angry. He simply pointed to a train arriving with 20 fresh planes and asked the German, "How long will it take you to replace the pilot we just shot down?" The German's expression changed. He realized they weren't fighting a war of skill. They were fighting a war of industrial attrition. In 1943, Joseph Priller mocked the milk bottle. By 1945, he admitted it was the best fighter bomber ever built. But by then, there were no German pilots left to listen to him. The joke had become the grave. The final numbers for the P-47 are staggering. 7,000 aircraft destroyed, 9,000 locomotives pulverized, and 86,000 railway cars turned to scrap. It flew 213,000 missions and fired 135 million rounds of ammunition. Today, if you visit the Air Force Museum in Ohio, you can see a restored P-47. It still looks fat. It still looks ugly. But beneath that flying barrel exterior lies the soul of a machine that taught the world a terrifying lesson. Resilience is a weapon. The P-47 entered the war as a joke and ended it as the sound of unavoidable death. The Germans laughed in 1943. By 1945, they were just trying to survive the thunder. If you're inspired by the story of the ugly underdog that crushed an empire, hit the like button. Every like tells the algorithm that real heroism shouldn't be forgotten. Subscribe and turn on notifications. We decode the most incredible military outliers every single week. Now I want to hear from you. In a dogfight, would you rather be in the most agile plane in the sky, or the one that can take 200 bullets and still fly home? Let us know in the comments below. We read every single one.